On today's episode of the Locked On Knicks podcast, we are drafting this. I'm going to do that one more time. 3, 2. On today's episode of the Locked On Knicks podcast, we are drafting the Knicks Summer League roster. Which players are we most interested to watch? Who could make an impact? Who could stake their claim for some legitimate rotation minutes next year? It's all coming up next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Gavin. I'm the Saturday co-host of the Locked On NBA podcast and a longtime credentialed media member covering the New York Knicks for nearly a decade. He is Alex Wolf, editor-in-chief of the Strickland, the greatest Knicks website in the whole wide world. You can check them out off the court on all forms of social media over at thestrick.land. Be sure to enjoy all of their fantastic coverage of Knicks Summer League. This is, of course, Locked On Knicks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your daily podcast on the New York Knicks, giving you the most detailed insight on your favorite team 5 whole days a week at least. So be sure to join thousands of other Knicks fans in subscribing on both YouTube and your favorite podcast platform for the best insight on your favorite team every single day. Alex, on today's show, I already mentioned it. We are drafting Summer League talents on the New York Knicks. And we're going to tell you what interests us about each of them, either based on the production they showed last year or at their previous stop. We're going to go through all 4 rookies. We're going to hit on Mohamed Diawara. We got a lot of requests, so we're going to touch on Dink Pate and James Nnaji. And maybe one more name that Alex, at the very least, found fun to pronounce. That is all coming up in just a sec here on Locked On Knicks. But before I get into that, I wanted to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Alex, I want to say annual. I don't know if we'll ever do this again together, but in the possibly soon-to-be annual Locked On Knicks Summer League preview draft, I don't know how many sponsors we're going to get with that name. Who's your first pick? Who's the first player that interests you on this roster?
Yeah, that name really read like a Leslie Knope headline. Breaking news, Knicks podcasters draft players in Knicks Summer League. It's a summer smash.
To quote Fred Armisen on that show, straight to jail.
Anyways. There you go. I'm glad that you gave me first pick, because then I get to take, I feel like, the lowest hanging fruit here, which is Pacome Dadiet. He's my top guy that I'm interested to see. What's nice about having a guy that was one of the youngest players in last draft is that he comes into this one and you can go, hey, he's still just 19 years old this year. He still potentially has a ton of room to grow. We've seen him and his fellow 2024 draft classmates at the practice facility with Mikal Bridges chopping it up the other day in a social post. So it was him and Hukporti and McCullar all there together, just picking Mikal's brain. So hopefully he's been at the practice facility a lot and getting lots of shots up. I mean, looking back last year, I remember thinking this is probably going to be a rough summer league because he's going to be adjusting to the NBA game, going to be adjusting to the NBA 3-point line. And of course, we saw that happen. Averaged 7 points on a robust 30.8% shooting in the summer league last year with 4 boards and an assist in about 26 minutes per game, but redeemed himself pretty well in the G League this year. 15 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, and 1 stock per game. 41, 32, 84 shooting splits. So 41% from the field, 32% from 3, 84% from the free throw line. Got up a lot of threes per game, which is good. So clearly that's what he views his role as being in the future, is someone that can get up threes, that can hopefully get them up at a little better clip than 32%. But he's still so young. You know, he had to adjust to a further out 3-point line, that sort of stuff, like especially when, you know, he was in the European system where they become pro earlier than they do in the US and are kind of just locked into basketball at like an earlier age. So through his teenage years, whatever, was playing with the pro line in Europe, which is shorter than the NBA pro line for 3. You know, maybe that takes a year to learn those skills. I don't know. I would imagine that the amount of muscle memory that goes into that is pretty huge. So I want to see him hopefully burn up the nets a little bit, shooting some threes in this summer league. And Really, I want to see where his defense is at too. I think that the one thing that stood out to me last year amidst the not so great shooting was the game against the Hornets where he like proudly took the Brandon Miller assignment. And I mean, I remember Miller like kind of got his to a degree. But I remember also walking away being like, hey, he looked pretty freaking good for like a guy stepping into like I think that was their first game, if I remember correctly. Like a guy stepping into his first game and having to defend, a guy who is a clear NBA scorer, like a guy that is probably going to be a 20-point per game NBA scorer for most of his career. That was pretty impressive to me. So I want to see, what kind of claim he stakes on summer league. I guess is the way that I would look at it. As still one of the youngest guys on this team, will he kind of try to step up, take that leading scorer role, take the hardest defensive assignment on the other team? Like, what has he been doing this offseason so far? Really intrigued to see where that's at and just kind of see the progress, because I think you and I both feel pretty similar about him, that he's like a couple years away from being a couple years away still, but at some point during his rookie deal, I expect that we'll see him start getting real NBA minutes. This might go a long way towards telling us if that's this year or if it's, hey, probably still another year out or so.
Yeah, I think there's some legitimate pressure on him. Like we talked about it last show, but the Knicks did not really solve their lack of wing depth this offseason, and it would have been very difficult for them to find anyone who could play at a high level. I think they did well to get Jordan Clarkson and Gershon Yabusele. But there is an opening there for Pacome Dadiet, especially like we mentioned, like OG Anunoby had one of the healthiest seasons of his career. Josh Hart was certainly laboring, but he played almost every night. Mikal Bridges, of course, played in every single game. If one or two of those guys go down, all of a sudden, like you're looking at a world where Pacome Dadiet is thrown into a pretty big role. He had a pretty decent season in the G League, played 19 games, 15 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 stock, 41% from the field, 32% from three, 84% from the line. Most encouraging to me, he got a 6.5 threes per game, so he was willing to take them. I go back to preseason because, to your point, I blotted out his summer league because I thought that was almost a throwaway pick at times watching him in summer league, and that tells you, again, never overreact to summer league, especially when the guy you're overreacting to is just 18 years old. But the shot looked incredibly feathery in preseason for the Knicks. He was 5 for 9 from 3. Again, it's 2 games. You don't want to overreact to that versus the larger sample size that shows like he is a middling NBA shooter at this point, though. The 84% from the line is certainly indicative of the fact that he has good form and could be a good prognosis, or indicative of a good prognosis for him going forward. I just thought like his shot at times looked effortless and very fluid. And I'm hoping we see that again over higher volume, right? With the summer to work on it, with the summer to get up to like NBA strength, to your point, to shoot that shot over and over and over again. You mentioned his defense in summer league. I thought his defense in the regular season at times was fantastic. James Edwards included my favorite possession from him in his article in the Athletic previewing summer league, where he was guarding Jalen Wilson on the Nets, shut him down, dribble handoff to Zaire Williams, and he says, "No worries, I got that. I'm going to switch." Shut him down as well, forced him into a tough fadeaway. I'm hoping, I assume by default, Kevin McCullar Jr. would get a good chunk of them, or Mohamed Diawara when he's on the court. I'm hoping at times, especially to start games, they give Pacome that top defensive matchup. I just want to see how he holds up. I want him to hit threes. Hopefully you see just some flashes off the dribble. That'd be encouraging. But for that to be a successful pick, he just has to develop into like a big, lengthy 3-and-D guy who could maybe beat the occasional closeout and attack the rim, which is something we also saw in preseason last year. I think there is potential for him to play a role next season, and it could just be very, very simple, but you need to see him start having some success in summer league for that to be a thing. All right, my next pick, maybe a little bit out of the box, but I am going Kevin McCullar Jr., which on the surface, I'm going to say is a pretty stupid pick. He's 24 years old, which is older than Anthony Edwards. So if he's an NBA player, Alex, you expect him to come out and dominate. He was coming off a knee injury, obviously did not get substantial NBA minutes last year in the G League, 12 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 stocks. Did not shoot the ball well, which is worrying because that is the number one concern about him. 39% from the field, 22% from 3, 79% from the line. Did have some good games later in the G League season against the College Park Skyhawks. He had back-to-back 20-point triple-doubles. He needs to dominate basically every area that is not shooting the ball, and he needs to shoot the ball at least decently for him to just indicate that like he could potentially play some minutes next year. If not, I'm not sure he's someone the Knicks should really continue investing in.
Yeah, I kind of feel similar. I think, based off his G League stats, like I wouldn't, I don't know if I would say that he dominated, but like he showed out there, and he is older. So I do think I agree with you that he kind of, I mean, I was saying that I hope that Pacome puts his stamp on things and kind of asserts himself, uh, but more as a scorer. Like I hope that McCullar kind of tries to just put his stamp on this thing in terms of being like, I'm going to be everywhere.
Mhm.
I'm basically going to prove to you that I can more or less be like Josh Hart. Because I think that's like the blueprint for what he could eventually become, I think, as someone who, even in college, I don't think was like a phenomenal shooter.
No, he shot really well first half of his senior season. Outside of that, basically never shot one. I think only
Yeah.
averaged more than 10 a game his senior season. So
Right. So as like a utility guy, potential triple double threat,
Mhm.
I like him. Um, I kind of feel the same where I think, he's got to show something in this one because honestly, his future is kind of murky at the moment. The Knicks tendered him I think a two-way restricted offer or two-way qualifying offer. So I mean, he could take that potentially, and I'm sure the Knicks would probably, without thinking too hard, bring him back on another two-way contract. But other than that, they can't really afford to bring him back on a regular NBA contract right now unless he like really shows out. And there's also a chance. I mean, maybe if some of the other guys on this particular team show out, like if Diawara plays well, if Pate plays well, if Nnaji plays well, like that's three guys right there that could potentially shove him out of the two-way conversation and make a case for themselves. I think the Knicks would do that? No, I mean they're a very relationships based team. We'll get into it in a minute, but like I think there are reasons why they might look at Diawara and say like, "Hey, we want to keep him overseas or something instead of bringing him over this year."
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, he's sort of playing for his life at this point, which sucks because it's like he obviously was dealing with a pretty gnarly injury after college and then going into last year, which limited what he was able to do. But now's the time. Come in, show that you're more than worth, keeping on this team one way or another, and do some stuff. I think, and then maybe he finds himself with a prorated rest of season contract later on in this season, if the Knicks end up having to cut somebody or whatever. So, or have a trade or, whatever the case may be. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see what he brings though. I like the skill set, and all in all, I'm pretty excited for it. But we still got more guys to talk about. One guy who actually two guys who probably had more of an NBA role than either of the two guys we talked about already this past year, that we haven't talked about yet, that were also drafted last year, which, spoiler alert, they'll probably be the next two picks that we make in this little draft, and then the newcomers. But plus the Knicks second round pick, Mohamed Diawara, Dink Pate, who they took after the draft and signed to a contract, James Nnaji, who they got in the cat trade. Lots more good names to come up when we get back in to Locked On Knicks.
But first, we want to tell you about our good friends over at Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt just a little bit easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is much more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. One surprising thing I started noticing when I tracked with Monarch was just the ability. Like I live with my girlfriend. Like it's sometimes hard for us to juggle our budget together simultaneously. Monarch just made it incredibly easy to work together out of one app and ensure we were always on the same page, which I think anyone living with a partner can tell you, like, that is a really big deal. It helps you avoid a lot of fights, and it keeps you on the same page financially, which is important. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right, Alex, as much as I want to jump the line and steal this pick and pivot into a snake draft. I will respect the rules of, again, the soon to possibly be annual Locked On Knicks NBA Summer League roster. Who are we going to talk about next draft? So you're up. Who do you want to hit on?
I'm actually probably going to pick someone different than who you want to pick anyway. So I'm
Sure.
going to go Ariel Hukporti. I'm actually
Very
really
good.
intrigued to see where he's at. One, I want to see how his health is looking, what kind of condition he's looking like. Obviously had a meniscus injury that he had to get repaired. There was reports that he maybe would have been ready during the postseason.
I
Not
think he
that
was. I think he was active and he was available for at least start of the second round, I want to say. But
something like that. Yeah. I mean, not that we would have expected to actually see him play postseason minutes, but he looked good then. I'm curious to just see, does he look like he's trusting his knee? Does he look like he's still the athlete that he was? Weirdly, I mean, this is another guy. If I'm putting on my 1 year ago glasses and looking back, this was another guy that last year I walked away not terribly impressed by and was like, oh, he looks kind of heavy footed. Like the timing seems pretty good, but like he
we
doesn't.
were both Scap and Sev heads last year.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
the way.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like so, we both wanted Scappy, and Hukporti proved us wrong in the regular season. I mean, he looked great. He looked like a crazy good athlete during the regular season. So I don't know if I think he was sort of low key fighting a little minor injury during last summer league or something like that, if I remember correctly. That obviously was hampering him quite a bit. So I'll be intrigued to see how he comes out. It's also, I mean, so last year in the G League, he had 7 points a game, 7 boards a game, 2 blocks a game. Last year in the summer league, very similar stat line, 8, 7, and 2 blocks per game. So I mean, he gave some really good minutes when the Knicks needed it this year at the NBA level. Another one of those guys that I kind of will just hopefully be looking for him to look almost like a summer league Mitchell Robinson in this one. Mitchell Robinson, like the current version, summer league Mitch built different. No one's ever going to look as good as that. I mean, that was one of the most impressive summer leagues I think I've ever seen, at least from a Knicks perspective with the stuff that he was pulling out. But I mean, more just like the role that Mitch plays on the big club. I hope to see Hukporti do in this one because he's kind of like their only center that is a known commodity at this level or at any sort of NBA level. Because the only other guy that they have that's listed as a center is James Nnaji, who's going to be coming over really impressive physically, but not someone that we've seen on an NBA stage yet, even at a summer league stage. So, at least as far as I know, I don't believe he played for the Timberwolves ever at the summer league level. So I'm really intrigued to see what Hukporti does, just how much how he tackles being the defensive anchor assignment, and just in general, how he winds up looking during this one. I expect, again, I sort of just expect all four, which is probably a spoiler for who you're about to pick, but all four of the guys that got drafted last year, considering the Knicks didn't really go out of their way to draft anyone that looks NBA ready this year. I'm really intrigued to see how these guys kind of assume that like leadership mantle of being the second year players on the team. And for Huck, it's going to be a lot of just like doing the dirty work, stopping lots of guys inside, providing a good example that way. But also, I'm kind of curious how quick of a hook they'll give him too, because I do actually think that he was the most NBA ready looking guy that played for the Big Knicks last year as well. So will they kind of give him that quick hook and be like, let's not risk any injuries or anything. Let's just make sure that you're looking good, have some fun with your new teammates, and then we'll get you out of here for like the last 4 games or something. So I'm kind of intrigued to see what kind of role he plays in that way too and how they treat him.
Yeah, he was going to be my 4th pick essentially on that basis. I feel like he, to your point, is just a known commodity, and I'm really just looking for stuff on the margins from him. One thing that really impressed me, I'll go back to, I think it was that same Nets game where Pacome got the back-to-back stops. I remember writing in my notes, and I didn't have to remember hard because I pulled them up before we did this episode, that it was kind of shocking to watch him in contrast to Jericho Sims, where Jericho Sims would catch the ball and be like, all right, help, Jalen, come get it. And Hukporti would catch, and he would be going right to the rim or spraying it out on the short roll to Josh Hart, wide open in the corner. Like he was consistently aggressive and trying to make plays, like whether it was rolling all the way for a dunk or like he has the little Hartenstein flip shot. Like he just had more of a bag than I thought. He was dramatically more athletic than I thought, to your point, from what we saw in Summer League. He was fantastic playing drop defense. Again, that is something I think will be missed with Tom Thibodeau gone. He was as good as any coach in the league, schooling young bigs in the art form of drop defense, which is just incredibly difficult to do and to master. And Hukporti came in, like, credit to his youth coaches as well and his early pro coaches, because he was, I thought, fantastic in that capacity. And it was so good just watching man and deterring a shot, but also deterring the lob at the same time. I'm hoping offensively from him, if he gets a mismatch in the post, he'll attack it. That was the one area at times he was a little passive and a little reticent. Like, he's a huge dude. He's very explosive. He should be able to just shove guys under the basket. Obviously, if we see some real footwork from him, that's a bonus. Defensively, I'm looking for his awareness of the scheme and positioning. There were times in more aggressive coverages where he got a little overeager and got out of position. And that's where you would see Tom Thibodeau get disgusted with him and have a quick hook. If he can master that or just get a little bit closer to being on point with that, that would be really encouraging. My next pick, who would have been my third pick, is Tyler Kolek, because I do think there's stuff to prove there. He had an 8-game stretch from March 22nd to April 13th, where he played 17 minutes per game. So that's where I pulled the stats from. He only had 3 points per game, had 6 assists, which is just a ridiculous assist rate, like per 36. That translates to 12 or 13 assists, 1 stock a game, shot the ball. Everyone cover your ears, cover your eyes if you're watching on YouTube. 23% from the field, 18% from 3, 64% from the line, only taking 1.7 2-pointers per game, less than half his shots coming from 2-point range. Was much better in just a 4-game stint in the G League, 18 points per game, 10 assists, 5 rebounds. Last year in Summer League, right around 10 points, 7 assists per game. He was one of the better, most efficient Chris Paul-esque distributors in Summer League history. Tommy Beer had a stat that he was the first player in Summer League history to dish out over 35 assists while committing less than 8 turnovers. That's ridiculous. I'm looking, Alex, mostly into how he gets into his 3-point shot and his mid-range pull-up. And I want to see him occasionally be able to do so without a screen. I think that his biggest issue at the NBA level, it's kind of threefold. He's small. He's not going to get a ton of separation. He's not an elite shooter, even when he has time and space. But the biggest thing stopping him from being a good shooter, because I think his touch is fine, is that he's pretty slow to get into a shot, which if you're not athletic, that is and you can't get a lot of separation off the dribble or even with the screen, that is a death knell, right? Like, you are just not going to be a viable offensive player, even though I said last year, and I stand by this, like, I think in terms of pure isolated passing talent, he might be one of the top 10 passers in the league. He is a passing savant. He is elite in that capacity. No questions there. Hopefully he'll continue to attack the basket. He should have some really creative finishes around the rim, even when he didn't get a ton of separation. Just very intuitive, knowing like the right angle to place on the ball, on the release, how to put it off the backboard. He's great at that, hoping that continues. And you always want to see how he holds up defensively, because he's going to be targeted relentlessly. But similar to Kevin McCullar, you expect at his age, with his experience, like he needs to dominate to prove that he's deserving of a role in the NBA. Most specifically, he needs to be able to get into a shot.
Yeah, and I think based off what the Knicks have prioritized so far this offseason and what they're reportedly still prioritizing, which multiple people that I would trust to comment on this, like our buddy CP from Knicks Fan TV, Ian Begley, like have both said in the last week or so, like, yeah, the next move the Knicks make expected, they'll probably look for a ball handler, which is why we've heard names like Marcus Smart and, you and I have wish casted Malcolm Brogdon a little bit, but like, these various names that the Knicks are apparently interested in for one of those final roster spots makes you think maybe they're not as sold on Tyler Kolek now as they were a year ago, which again, he was an old rookie. He's going to be an old sophomore. So it's like, if things don't start taking shape for him soon, I feel like that 2 million and change that he's making might just turn into trade fodder at a certain point. And he'll end up either shipped off for a couple 2nd-round picks or something, or just included in a bigger trade or something like that as a finishing salary piece or whatever. Because it seems like he kind of needs to prove something during this summer league if he wants to, have a real role with the Knicks as soon as next year. That said, I think he's going to show out again. I think he's going to do great at setting the table for people. I'm really intrigued to see how he's going to do with some of these like really good athletes that are going to be on this team. Like, we already know Hukporti, like if he's playing at his best, is a great lob threat. Nnaji, really intrigued to see how he's going to do with him. I mean, even Dink Pate, like crazy athlete. Want to see some Tyler Kolek lobs in this one. That would be kind of fun. Create a little Knicks Summer League Lob City. But the big thing to me is going to be the defense thing. You said it, like teams might try to really target him. So if he could prove himself in a way sort of similar to like Jalen Brunson, for example. And I mean, we've drawn that comparison a number of times, other than obviously like Brunson is just an amazing scorer, but like they're guys that face some similar issues with, trying to find their way in the league in terms of not being phenomenal athletes, whatever. But we see from Brunson that he at least always gives a crap on defense and more often than not does not get completely exposed on defense.
Yeah, he's way stronger, which definitely helps and hurts
Which helps
a little bit. Yeah.
Right. So we'll see how that works. I mean, maybe he's done a little work in the weight room or whatever. Maybe not. But either way, I'm intrigued to see how he holds up on defense. And just all in all, if we walk away from this thinking like, oh yeah, he was such a positive that like I feel fairly confident that the Knicks are going to want to keep him around and maybe even give him a real shot this year. Which then we'd have to wait till preseason to see. But yeah, certainly intriguing. But we got the new names to get into when we get back in to this summer league draft. So we'll be back in just a moment to talk about Mohamed Diawara, Dink Pate, James Nnaji, and maybe a couple other names if we want to throw in some honorable mentions. Although by nature, we're each only picking one more guy with each of our draft picks, so to speak. So one of those guys is getting the honorable mention treatment no matter what. But either way, we'll be back in just a moment to keep talking through all the guys remaining that we think are interesting on this Knicks Summer League team. All right, we're back in to keep talking through Summer League, and I get to go again. So I'll just go ahead and make my last official draft pick here. Gavin, I'm going to, once again, I think pick someone different than the guy that you want to pick, just to give you your moment. I'm taking Dink Pate. First off, I'm really disappointed his last name is not pronounced Pate. It just feels very pinky out. Also, if he has a particularly great game, you would have been able to say like nickname him Foie Gras or something like that. But we'll take it. We are professionals here, so we will pronounce it properly. Dink Pate, 6'8", 210-pound guy, 19-year-old, similar to Pacome, only 19 years old right now, won't be 20 until partway through this season. Already a 2-year G League veteran, which is pretty crazy. And then went undrafted after having, I think, pretty real draft side, potentially as even up to like a mid first rounder at times during his time in the G League. Kind of fell off a cliff, I guess, this year. Probably doesn't help that the shooting numbers were not very good. He played for the Mexico City Capitanes this past year, played 34 games, had 10 points, 5 boards, 2 assists on 41% from the field, 26% from 3, which is icky, on 3.5 attempts per game, and 58% from the free throw line in 27 minutes per game. Did average about 4 assists per game for the G League Ignite the year prior. But I think the thing that intrigues me the most is that he's just a crazy, insane athlete. We don't usually see this be the Knicks type. Like, they don't normally go for the raw athlete type player, which leads me to believe that maybe they feel like they saw something that others didn't in this kid. Or maybe they just said, hey, this kid seemed like he was going to get drafted and then didn't. So maybe we just take a shot regardless if he's our type or not. I mean, if he was like really, really their type, they would have taken him instead of Diawara with that pick they had in the second round. But either way, they get him no matter what. He's just a crazy, insane athlete. You look up his highlights and he could just bounce out of the building. The dunks are going to be nasty. I bet he'll probably pull out a couple. He seems to have a really good head on his shoulders too. I mean, I know that that's easy to say. A lot of kids, like, obviously they get put in front of a camera and they want to say the right things, especially around draft time and stuff. But every interview I've seen from Pate is just like, he just seems really humble. He's acknowledging of the fact that like he's not perfect and he doesn't seem to be feeling himself too much. Seems like a really, really hard worker. Like, literally all he said is just like, I mean, because his career has been kind of weird to this point. Like the fact that he played for the G League Ignite, didn't get drafted out of that, or ultimately decided that wouldn't be, or actually, no, I don't think he was technically allowed to be drafted because he wouldn't have been old enough with the G League Ignite based off how the draft rules are. But then came back, played another year for the G League after the Ignite program folded, still played another year for an expansion team, no less, like in another country. Just seems to be all about just the hard work, like wants to just make an NBA team, have his impact felt. and, just do what he can to help a team win. It seems like the right sort of attitude. Like, I think if nothing else, I'm really looking for, I don't think it's likely that he gets signed to a full deal with the Knicks, but the thing that intrigues me is like, I think this is a good kid to kind of like throw in the farm system, so to speak. And, I hope at minimum he gets an Exhibit 10 contract and a Westchester Knicks contract, but I'm probably already, I don't want to say penciling him in, but I consider him a pretty strong candidate to be one of the two-way slots, because it just seems like even if you just have him on a two-way and he's just practicing with the team when they're home for, homestands and whatever while he's in Westchester, he seems like a hard worker. He seems like he's going to push people to get better. Seems like he's going to guard hard in practice, like lay it all on the floor every single time he steps on the floor, no matter what. Maybe I'm reading too much into just a handful of interviews or whatever, but maybe we'll start seeing some of that once they take the summer league court, if he comes out and brings that like 110% intensity.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. Anytime you hear 6'8" guard at 19 years old, and you watch his highlights, and he's doing like e-space in transition in game, like you're obviously pretty encouraged about him, or at least intrigued is probably the better word. I'm excited to your point on Tyler Kolek earlier. I'm excited to see some lobs. I'm excited to see them have some fun in transition. I'm curious, not that like based on how he shoots, he shouldn't get hard closeouts, but summer league has never really been known for defensive scouting or defensive intensity. So I'm hoping he toasts some closeouts and gets some transition, or not transition jams, but half court jams. And yeah, just like anything else he can flash beyond the athleticism, like maybe a little passing, like obviously that height is intriguing. I'm with you. That's a template that the Knicks just don't really have. I guess Jacob Toppin was the guy in that mold, though obviously he was much older coming out of Kentucky, so that was a little bit different. I hope the Knicks maybe stick with him for a couple seasons. My last guy is Mohamed Diawara, who we told you coming out of Cholet. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, in France's LNB league, where he averaged 6 points, 3 rebounds, 1.5 assists in 20 minutes a game in 27 games after he was traded. Did not shoot the ball particularly well, 38% from the field, 31% from three, 49% from the line. Just one stock per game, which for someone with his 7'4" wingspan, 6'9", and a 9'2" standing reach is certainly disappointing. I'll read the Sam Vecini quote on him. The idea here begins and ends on the defensive end, where he's genuinely quite impactful due to his athleticism and length. He flies around and moves well laterally on the perimeter, but he's not nearly the shot blocker or contester that you expect for someone his size. My bet is that he doesn't end up making it over, but I get the bet on these tools at least. Very good friends with Pacome Dadiet. I believe same agent as Gershon Yabusele, so there could have been a little bit of chicanery going on there. A little favor for the Knicks to eventually get Gershon, especially at less than his maximum mid-level slot, but I'm intrigued by the guy. I think his jump shot, from what I've seen on tape, looks pretty feathery, even if he's a little slow to get it off. They didn't let him switch all the times defensively, but I know Shaq's on Twitter shared some clips where he did. They look very good doing so. If I'm the Knicks, especially like if you get him, Pacome, and McCullar all out there at the same time, and heck, throw Nnaji or Hukporti in there too. Like, I want to see switching across the board. I want to see high pressure, in your face defense. I want to see this guy profile as like a future all defense type of talent on the defensive end of the floor, because his measurables and some of the stuff we saw from his foot speed suggests that he could be a pretty good defender in the NBA. And I think he's going to have to be. And he's basically said as much in interviews, because he is, I think, very, very unlikely to ever be anything more than like, all right, pass it to him and hope he hits an open three type of guy offensively. Again, still fairly young, just 20 years old, but I think that is the profile for him. Alex, we could maybe go lightning round. Did you want to quickly hit on James Nnaji, or any final thoughts on Diawara?
Yeah, I think you pretty much said it on Diawara, so I'll just move to James Nnaji. We've said the name like 18 times, and some people are probably like, "Who the heck is Nnaji?" Well, he came over in the Cat deal, his draft rights did. He is 6'11" with a 7'5" wingspan, which was reported pre-draft, so that might be he might even be a true 7-footer and longer than 7'5" wingspan at this point. I guess we'll see when official measurements come out if he ends up making the team. But guy's played in Europe his whole career to this point, and importantly, is one of the two guys that the Knicks could potentially use a second round exception on to sign, which is important with where they stand in relation to the second apron of the salary cap at the moment. So Nnaji might just almost by default end up filling one of those spots if they're not able to fit two full veteran minimums under that second apron, Nnaji might be able to just slide in there and get a full NBA deal if he plays really well, or Diawara could too. But they're the only two guys, as far as I know, that could sign using that exception for the Knicks right now. But he's again 6'11", 7'5" wingspan, reportedly, just huge. You look at him on tape and you're just like, this dude is big. Like, he looks like, with how wide his shoulders are and stuff, like there's a little bit of like, and look, I'm not saying that the rest of his game is like this in any way necessarily, but like he's got that like super wide shoulder profile and like enormous size of like a Dwight Howard almost. Like when you look at him, like he's just huge. Like he's just a big freaking dude. Um, he averaged 5.3 points and 4.1 boards in 16 minutes a game at Girona of the Spanish Liga ACB this past year. And then if you extrapolate that out to per 36, he was at about 12 points, 9 boards, and 3 stocks per 36. So seems like defense is going to be the calling card, defense and rebounding, which, stop me if you've heard this before, but I think the Knicks are pretty good at identifying and finding those guys. So this might have been someone that Walt Perrin especially looked at in that cat deal and said, hey, get me this guy. I think that he's really good. They have his draft rights. Like, just get that as a throw in, because I think we might have something to work with here. My only thing with him, he does seem to have some foul troubles. So if you look at his per 36 numbers over the course of his entire Euro career, ranges anywhere from like 4 to, I think, over 6 fouls per 36. Which is not great. So you wonder if he's maybe going to be one of those guys that in one of these games tests the 10 foul limit that they're allowed, particularly if they decide to give Huck a rest like later on in the summer league. Like if they're not really playing for anything anymore and it's like, just play a whole game, Nnaji, like whatever. Maybe he's one of those guys that pushes the 10 foul ceiling there. But I'm hoping to see him play pretty contained and, just I want to see how he is as a lob threat. I want to see just how strong he is on the glass, because it seems like that's definitely going to be a calling card for him. And then just what the defense looks like, and if he can keep the fouls under control. But definitely intriguing. He pops at his best. He pops on tape, which is sort of similar. It's why I like Pate as well. Just like guys like that can do some eye-catching stuff. It's like, well, let's start seeing if they can, like if they're a big piece of marble. Let's see if the Knicks summer league coaching staff can start carving out the sculpture here and starting to figure out the final form of what they could potentially be. Nnaji will be an interesting guy to see that with, and hopefully ends up doing enough to start making an NBA case for himself.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him too. I think with Tyler Kolek piloting, it is going to be a very fun team to watch. We will have you covered on the post game tomorrow, so be sure to tune into that. And after every summer league game, so plenty more fun stuff to come here on Locked On Knicks. We'll see if they fill that final roster spot with a vet. But until then, he's Alex. I'm Gavin. We'll talk to you soon on Locked On Knicks.